Hello and welcome back to the channel. We're carrying on with our rating updates. We've done the HQs and the elites already, so check those videos out afterwards. Let me know if you agree with the new ratings. So as mentioned in those videos, since the Necron Codex was released, Games Workshop have released other codexes for other factions, so the meta has slightly changed, so it's also a good chance to move the ratings around as we've now got more experience with the Necron Codex as well as 9th edition in general. So today's random shout out is going to go to Endless Waffles for the comment regarding the Canoptic Plasma site, so shout out to you. If you would like a random shout out, then get involved in the comments below. Somebody is going to get randomly selected every video for a shout out. Fun and games out the way, let's dive into today's video, which we haven't actually introduced yet. So we're going to be covering the troops, and also we're going to throw in the two transport options today, which are the Ghost Ark and the Night Scythe. So I'll be reviewing their ratings and I'll be giving them a quick summary for the good and the bad of each unit. I'm not going to go too deeply into these units because we've already done all the reviews, so I'm presuming you've seen all those already. Okay, first we've got the Necron Warriors. Reviewed back in January, received a 5-star rating from us, a top unit in the Codex as we all know. Starting with the good, they're a core unit, so very easy to synergize with characters and stratagems within the Codex. They've got a choice of 2 weapon options, one for a more close range attack at strength 5 or a mid-range attack at strength 4. They can be taken in units of up to 20, which is fantastic for any army, especially when they've got this sort of firepower. Not only that, they reanimate extremely well as they've only got 1 wound apiece. And again, due to having 20 models within the unit, they're unlikely to be removed from the board from a set of attacks made by a single unit, so should easily be reanimated. Adding to that last point, they've got their numbers of legions, so they're going to be re-rolling 1s to their reanimation rolls as well. Then further to add to that, they're the best unit to use resurrection orbs on, or an orb of eternity, to get all your dead warriors back from previous turns. They can of course go into the Night Scythe, which we'll mention later in the video, and I've got the option of the Ghost Ark as well. Although I wouldn't recommend the Ghost Ark because you can only fit 10 of them in, and fielding 10 doesn't make the max use of them. Speaking of the Ghost Ark, it can heal warriors with the repair ability. Similarly, Illumina's Juarez and the Technomancer can also do the same with their Rites of Reanimation ability, so they have great synergy with all sorts of different units in the book. The best synergy in my opinion is the Overlord with the My Will Be Done ability to get your 20 warriors hitting on 2s. The other synergy is their Royal Warden, just to get them out of combat and allow them to still fire again as they've got the core keyword. So again, more synergy, so they kind of work in almost every list here. As for the bad, they're quite slow at 5-inch movement. They aren't great in combat with 1 attack at strength 4, but 20 of them can at least do something with 20 attacks, providing that you can get them all into that engagement range. They've only got a 4+ armor save, so they're quite easy to take down before reanimation protocols go into play. Then their dedicated transport, which is the Ghost Ark, just doesn't quite suit them at the moment. As already mentioned, you shouldn't really field 10 warriors. 10 is 130 points and don't reanimate anywhere near as well as they would with 20, so if you want to save points, take 5 Immortals for 85 points in my opinion. Finally, you're restricted to taking a minion of 10 of them and not 5 of them, which works out more than those Immortals at minimum level. So these guys are going to be staying at a 5-star, still one of the best troop selections within the 40k world along with the Intercessors. There aren't many troop options that go to 20-man units and can dish out as much damage from 24-inch range and be so hard to remove at the same time. Next we have the Immortals. Another troops option here received the review in February of a 3.5 star. Now I don't feel like these have the same responsibilities as warriors do, even though they compete for the same troop slots. So as for the good, they're the cheapest troop selection you have for a min unit, so due to warriors having a min unit restriction of a 10-man unit, so 85 points isn't too big of an investment for a min unit of Immortals. As well as warriors, they are core, so they've got a lot of the same synergies that warriors do, such as My Will Be Done, or getting the Royal Warden to get them out of trouble, or using the Night Scythe perhaps. They're toughness 5, not toughness 4, so they're much more tankier, which makes them a solid objective holder, especially in your own deployment zone. They get 2 attacks base instead of 1. Now this doesn't make them melee monsters, but 10 attacks from 5 models, and all 5 are likely to be in engagement range, especially after a pile-in, whereas a 20-man warrior blob, you're not going to get all 20 of them in. They've got a 3+ armor save instead of that 4+ armor save, so even more resiliency there. They also reanimate reasonably well as they're 1 wound models. I say reasonably because you can only get 10 in a unit maximum. There is the possibility of losing the entire squad in a single ranged or melee attack. Then finally, they've got the option of the 2 different weapons, one being a 30-inch range weapon which is rapid fire. So again, this makes them really good units to stay back and score points while firing from either your deployment zone or the middle of the table. As for the bad, even though they're core and they synergize with many things, they don't synergize as well as warriors do, such as Technomancers healing D3 warriors but only 1 Immortal. Ghost Arks have no synergy with Immortals at all. They're quite slow again at 5-inch movement, and they're still only 1 wound models, which mean that they'll reanimate well, but a max unit of 10, like I said, could be wiped out in a single phase of attacks. the Tesla carbine has no AP and isn't the best weapon against the more elite units right now. Then finally, even with 10 attacks from the unit in combat, they aren't meant for combat, and once they are caught in melee, they're pretty useless. And you're not likely going to be bringing a Royal Warden in for a min unit of 5 Immortals, as that Warden's going to cost you 75 points. You may as well just bought another Immortal unit for 10 more points. After a bit of more experience of playing these guys in 9th edition in general, I think they do deserve a bump up to 4-star. Not quite warrior level, but as mentioned at the start, they have different roles to warriors. Warriors are more of a forward pushing unit because they've got a mid-range weapon or a close range weapon depending on what you chose. So you could be making use of the Veil of Darkness relic on those warriors, which is quite a common combination. But you're never going to really use a Veil of Darkness on Immortals, as they've got the range to stay back and score. So I've started fielding both warrior units as well as Immortal units in a single list now, and I don't see them as direct competition anymore. So that's the 2 troop options out the way. Moving into the transports, starting off with the Ghost Ark. Reviewed back in February and received a 3.5 rating from me. It was actually a weird one for me, as in past editions I've just ignored it as it's not been that great, so I expected it to follow suit, but the more I looked into it, the more I realised that actually it's quite a solid option. Not so much for the transport side of things, as it's a useless transport in my opinion, but as a tank. So I'll explain why in the good section. So it's got plenty of wounds with 14 wounds. It's got toughness 6 and quantum shielding, so it can't be wounded on less than a 4, which is virtually transhuman physiology for Necrons. This also gives him a 5+ invuln save, which is making it very survivable. That's one of the main points here. It's got 5 rapid fire Gorse weapons, which mirror the weapons that a warrior can take, so it can shoot 10 shots within 12 inches at -1 AP, which can easily be buffed with, say, the Mefrit Dynasty. We actually did the Mefrit Dynasty tactics video quite recently, so if you do play Mefrit or you're interested in other Dynasty tactics, check that video out too. Living Metal isn't something I'd usually write home about, but on a resilient model with a degrading stat line, Living Metal can be the difference between being bracketed or not. This thing also has the Warrior Repair Barge as mentioned earlier, so it's going to be repairing D3 warriors per turn or D6 if you use the Ghost Ark stratagem, which is only 1 command point. Pairing the barge with a Technomancer and the stratagem each turn combos up to a D6 plus D3 warriors back every turn, which is kind of magic really. Add the Resurrection Orb or the Orb of Eternity relic and you'll never see these things die. And to add to that, you can't target a Technomancer or Orb Carrier because they've got the Lookout Sir ability. They're hidden within 20 warrior models. Unless they're snipers, they're not getting picked out. And to add to that, if your opponent's targeting your warriors, they're just going to be wasting their firepower because your Ghost Ark is going to keep bringing them back. So that then forces them to target your big quantum shielded tank with a boatload of wounds and a 3+ save. This is kind of what makes this thing good. They've also got a stratagem as well to make that 5+ quantum shield invuln save go to a 4+ save for a phase. So link this all together and watch your opponent cry in the corner of the room. It's also got fly. Then to add to all this, like I mentioned in the Ghost Ark's intro, they're better used as a tank, not only for repairing. So if you do what I've just mentioned with a combination of the Technomancer and the warriors, and you're doing it in sort of the centre of the board or any sort of hot spot in the battle, you're very likely going to be scoring over your opponent with 20 warriors, 2 HQs and an arc. Add the Nihilak Dynasty to give objectives secured. It's also quite a large model, so it can really create a huge roadblock for enemy units, especially those without fly, as they'd have to chew through the Ghost Ark and it's going to take them a long time to do it. And with those warriors nearby, you fall back with the arc, let your warriors do their thing. Now if you don't want to fall back, it's still a vehicle that can shoot into combat no problem. There are some negatives however. So the transport part of the profile as mentioned is worthless. There's only one real reason you'd take 10 warriors in an arc. It's if they took the Reapers and you drove them up the board to shoot at close range, but the Veil of Darkness relic is much easier, or a Night Scythe that can carry 20 warriors. It's just far more effective than using the Ghost Ark as a transport. It's only toughness 6, although to be honest it makes no difference because strength 4, strength 5 still need 5s, and high strength weapons still need 4s due to quantum shielding. Its damage output isn't that huge for 145 points. That's not really what the Ghost Ark is about, but when you spend that sort of points, you sometimes want to feel like it's doing some sort of damage, but in this case it's not. Now as for the reviewed rating, I think it's solid, but I still feel like a lot of people aren't using it. Maybe they still think it's like a transport and not a tank. It's quite rare that I actually see a Ghost Ark at the moment. Maybe it's my local meta. Let me know below, do you see Ghost Arks a lot? So from my own experiences, it does deserve a 3.5, but I'm going to drop it down to a 3, at least until more start to return to the tabletop. Okay, on to the last unit for today's video, which is the Night Scythe. One of the 2 flight options and also one of the 2 transport options within the codex. So it was only reviewed recently and it received a 2-star rating. So for the good, they're a solid method of getting core units into good range, especially for a charge, which works particularly well with units such as Lichguard. For that charge, warriors can also make use of it getting into Reaper range with a full 20-man unit too. Now you can opt to take just 19 warriors and a buffing character along for the ride, but the majority of the buffs happen in the command phase, so they need to survive until the next turn in order to get those buffs out. An orb carrier is quite helpful here though. So as mentioned, they allow 20 infantry models in the transport, which is double the amount the Ghost Ark does, and makes better use of warriors, as the Resurrection Orb in particular works better on larger units. It's not limited to only warriors either. It's of course very fast and makes use of the hard to hit ability as well as the aircraft abilities, so it can only be charged at if that enemy unit has got the fly keyword. It can score Line Breaker fairly easily with the help of the second unit. Then as for the bad, it's got a degrading stat line, it's competing in the Codex against the Veil of Darkness, which is free, although the relic doesn't get them at just over an inch away, so there are pros and cons to both, but the relic is free and the Night Scythe is 145 points. It's got a poor damage output with the Twin Tesla Destructor, with no AP and only 1 damage. It can't score objectives by holding them. Then finally it's got that restricted movement because it's got that 90-degree pivot and the minimum movement is 20 inches, so you can get forced off the board. If you're not going off the board, you need to land somewhere. If you can't, then you're going to be destroyed. So you probably already guessed, but this one's going to be staying at a 2-star. It's only been recently reviewed. So that's the troops and the transport options updated, guys. We're going to be updating the fast attack options next. Drop a like to support the channel and sub if you are new. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.